Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and giallo enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things giallo here on The King in Giallo. Our next stop on our journey through giallo cinema is The Black Belly of the Tarantula, directed by Paolo Cavara, released in 1971. In this video, I will do a deep dive overview, then segue into a full review and Gialli Tally. The overview will be spoiler-free, the review and Gialli Tally will not. Here is The Black Belly of the Tarantula. Overview. The Black Belly of the Tarantula is an Italian and French co-production. The film is directed by Paolo Cavara, written by Lucille Lax, and composed by Ennio Morricone. The cast is played by Giancarlo Giannini as Inspector Tallini, Claudine Auger as Laura, Stefania Sandrelli as Anna Tallini, Barbara Bouchet as Maria Zani, Silvano Tranquilli as Paolo Zani, Rossella Falk as Franca Valentina, Annabella Incontrera as Mirta Ricci, Ezio Marano as the Monsieur, and Barbara Bach as Jenny. The film follows Inspector Tallini, who is trying to solve a recent string of murders committed on female patrons of an upscale spa. His investigation enlightens him to blackmail and drugs being involved. The killer's MO is also discovered to be involving paralyzing the women using a poisoned acupuncture needle, which is stabbed into the base of their necks, causing them to be unable to move, but still remain conscious to all the pain. However, as the bodies pile up, the killer makes things personal when it is evident that they are spying on Tallini and his home life, forcing him to question whether he is cut out for detective work. The Black Belly of the Tarantula is one of the first and more obvious cash grabs, capitalizing on the success of The Bird with the Crystal Plumage by Dario Argento, evidenced by the extravagant title, the elaborate murder set pieces, the humorous vignettes with side characters, the gloved-up and trench coat wearing killer, which is itself a nod to Blood and Black Lace, plus a moody and atmospheric soundtrack by composer Ennio Morricone. The biggest difference is the main character being a formal police detective, which is something that Dario Argento would avoid doing for several years. All in all, Black Belly manages to be one of the more successful cash-ins of the early days of the giallo boom in Italian and European cinema. Its strong ties to both Bird and Blood and Black Lace are very apparent, but the movie sidesteps the path of pure imitation and manages to draw on these previous films as inspiration and guidance without devolving into the realm of pure mimicry. For example, yes, the film follows Blood and Black Lace with its posh setting, serving as the foundation for a drug ring, but the main character of Inspector Tallini is far from the usual police detective trope used in giallo films, whereby they oftentimes are simply there to just move the investigation along from one scene to the next. The character here, played by Giancarlo Giannini, has dimensions and some backstory. He is new to his assignments of investigating murders, and the pressure of this new day-to-day are really having a negative effect on him, and he fears that he is not up to the task. Plus, as the killings continue, he begins to blame himself for not being able to solve the mystery sooner. We also get plenty of scenes of his home life with his wife and the issues they are going through involving furniture and remodeling. In execution, the character certainly comes off as more of a real person and one who the audience can easily sympathize with. The film and its protagonist are certainly in good form, and along with this, in true giallo fashion, the film contains plenty of S and V. In terms of sex, the opening alone involves a naked woman played by Barbara Bouchet being given a full body massage as she teases the blind masseuse. The setting of the spa lends itself to naturally allow for plenty of skin to be seen, and in terms of violence, the kills are certainly very evocative and cringe-inducing. As mentioned earlier, the killer inserts a long barb into the back of the neck of their victims, rendering them unable to move or to speak, and while they lie there helpless, eyes wide open, the killer cuts open their bellies. The practical effects and use of editing are superb, as the illusion of the kills gives us just enough to see what is happening, but sets our imaginations to work as well. For me, every time the needle is stuck into someone's neck, it makes me shudder, and the knife carving them up, though the effect is simple enough to achieve, it doesn't make it any less convincing. There is also a callback, whether intentional or not, to Mario Bava's gialli of Blood and Black Lace and Hatchet for the Honeymoon, in which a victim is stalked and killed in a room surrounded by mannequins. This giallo is somewhat of a masterclass for everything from the editing to the cinematography to the soundtrack. Everything works and everyone is trying. Giancarlo Giannini is amazing as the lead. Inspector Tellini has enough development to justify a series of gialli with him as the main character. Stefania Sandrelli is great as his wife. She was seen previously in Divorce Italian Style, 1961 by Pietro Germi, and The Conformist, 1970 by Bernardo Bertolucci. Claudine Auger would go on this same year to appear in Mario Bava's next giallo, Twitch of the Death Nerve, aka Bay of Blood. Before this role, she had won the title of Miss France and was seen in the James Bond film Thunderball, 1965. Barbara Bach would marry Ringo Starr as well as appear in a James Bond film of her own, The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977. Silvano Tranquilli was born in 1925 and debuted in films in 1955. He was seen in the 1962 Italian horror film The Terror of Dr. Hitchcock by Riccardo Frida and Castle of Blood, 1964 by Antonio Margheriti. In these films, he was billed under his Anglicanized pseudonym, Montgomery Glenn. He would appear in several more gialli, including The Blood-Stained Butterfly, 1971, as well as Smile Before Death and So Sweet, So Dead, both 1972. He would pass away in 1995. Rossella Falk was born in 1926. She mostly acted on the stage and worked with director Luchino Visconti. Her film work includes 8½, 1963 by Federico Fellini, and Modesty Blasé, 1966 by Joseph Losey. She has a couple other giallo credits including Run Psycho Run, 1968 by Brunello Rondi, and Sleepless, 2001 by Dario Argento. She passed away in 2013. Annabella Incontrera was Liz in Double Face, 1969 by Riccardo Frida. She would go on to appear in numerous more gialli such as The Case of the Bloody Iris, So Sweet, So Dead, and The Crimes of the Black Cat, all from 1972. Other giallo veterans include Ezio Marano from A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, 1971, as well as one of my favorite supporting actors in giallo films, Eugene Walter, seen in The House with the Laughing Windows, 1976, as well as Fulvio Mingozzi in Deep Red, 1975. Paolo Cavara, the film's director, was born in 1926 and got underway with film in the late 1950s, starting as an assistant director. He would take on directing in the 1960s after collaborating with Gualtiero Jacopetti and Franco Prosperi on the infamous mockumentary film Mondo Cane, 1962. All three men would earn themselves nominations for the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. The immediate success of the film guaranteed a series of other mockumentaries in the same vein, including Women of the World, 1963. Apparently, during the filming of Mondo Cane, Cavara was in a car with Jacopetti and his girlfriend, the actress Belinda Lee. The car crashed near San Bernardino, California, on United States Highway 91, resulting in the death of Lee, while the other occupants walked away with minor injuries. Some of his other directing credits include Deaf Smith and Johnny Ears, 1973, a spaghetti western with Franco Nero of Django fame, Plot of Fear, 1976, another giallo, and The Wild Eye, 1967, the plot of which seems to have no doubt lent some inspiration to Ruggero Deodato and his film Cannibal Holocaust, 1980, as Cavara's film centers on an obsessive Mondo-style documentarian who goes to third world nations to get the footage he desires for his film. Cavara would pass away at the age of 56 in 1982. Here is some IMDb trivia. 3 Bond girls appeared in this film. They were Claudine Auger, who had the female lead in Thunderball, 1965, Barbara Bach, who went on to have the female lead in The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977, and Barbara Bouchet, who appeared in Casino Royale, 1967. The first two appeared in Eon Bond movies, while the third appeared in a non-Eon Bond movie, which was a spoof. On top of featuring several Bond girls, the film stars a younger Giancarlo Giannini, who played Renee Mathis in Casino Royale, 2006, and Quantum of Solace, 2008. The track entitled Un uomo si è dimesso from the Black Belly of the Tarantula is featured in the 2009 film Amer. The track entitled Mondo Perduto from Black Belly of the Tarantula is also featured in the 2013 Giallo film The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears. And the 2014 Giallo spoof comedy movie The Editor has the killer in the film paralyzing his victims and then using a live tarantula to kill them.
The wandering spider. He's very aggressive. Leave you now.
Damn, another junk.
But I digress. On to the review. Spoilers ahead for those of you who haven't yet seen the film. You've been warned. My prediction for the movie's GialliTally score. So I rewatched Black Belly, but I didn't take note before, during, or after what the GialliTally score might be. Having just rewatched it recently though, I am going to predict 500 to 550 points. That might be generous. Well, let's begin the GialliTally and review portion of the video, beginning, as always, with the pre-viewing cliches. The repeat offenders are 1 point for actor, 3 for writer, 3 for composer, and 5 for director. Giancarlo Giannini was in Libido, 1 point. Barbara Bouchet was in The Man with Icy Eyes, 1 point. Rossella Falk was in Run, Psycho, Run, 1 point. Annabella Incontrera was in Double Face, 1 point. Ezio Marano was in A Lizard in a Woman's Skin and Vergogna Schifosi, 2 points. Fulvio Mingozzi was in The Cat o' Nine Tails and The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, 2 points. And Ennio Morricone composed for The Cat o' Nine Tails, A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, The Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Vergogna Schifosi, and A Quiet Place in the Country, 18 points. Cliché points for the title, The Black Belly of the Tarantula. Color, 5 points. A body part, 5 points. And animal, 5 points. First look, 25 points for the Italian director, and an additional 15 points for the movie releasing during the golden age of Giallo cinema, plus an additional 15 points for this being a quintessential Giallo film. And would you look at that, it is plot o'clock. We have some warm hands and steam action to offset this cold open. Cold open, 5 points. B is for blind, 5 points. The music is incredibly evocative. I doubt any musician in that time would have thought to mostly use female exhales as the primary sound. We are treated to enough skin to rival a taxidermist. We receive our titolo di carta. Let me just get right up in here. N is for nudity, 5 points. I know it's side ass, but no, this counts. He's blind, but he can see everything he's doing. The massage continues, as does the teasing. T is for telephone, 5 points. This young lady answers the phone and is inquired by the man on the line, Zani, about the woman receiving the massage. The blind monsieur answers and fetches the woman to the phone. The two argue, her telling him that she will see him later, and then she gets offended after he calls her a nymphomaniac. Cut to her being slapped by the man. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny, woman is slapped, 5 points. How you feel about round 2, see? Yeah. He calls her a whore and accuses her of blackmailing him, but she has no clue what he's getting at. She claims that he's making all this up. Stop and add, I is for infidelity, extra points if blackmail or murder occur after, 10 points, and V is for voyeur, extra points for it being an act of infidelity, 10 points. The man presses her to name the other man in the photo, but she takes the photograph. She does rip it, and he sort of throws some catch wrestling at her. What is that, a wrist lock? He walks away and tells her to leave him alone. Let's get these out of the way. Art featured, 5 points, and F is for fashion, 5 points. Once alone, the woman makes a call just as the scene cuts. I am not counting nudity for this sculpture or any sculptures. Photographs are one thing. G is for gloves, 5 points. Our unseen character here grabs an acupuncture needle, then heats it over a flame and drops the hot end in a liquid which sputters. I would guess this is disinfecting, but I know nothing about this. The needle is then placed into a snug holder and hidden on the person's trench coat. The scene ends with a Bava-like focus rack. Outside the house from earlier, the unseen person searches for a way in. This woman is Maria, who is woken up by the sound of a dog barking. She lets the dog in. Animals featured, a pet dog, 2 points. J is for J and B, 5 points. Maria lets the dog out. We get a few nice shots, which are enough for me to add first-person POV of the killer, 5 points, and killer's identity is hidden due to the framing and editing, 5 points. Maria grabs a bottle and goes upstairs. The assailant is in the house. As she rounds the stairs, the lights go out and she knows that she is not alone. She continues, and once at the top, she is ambushed. The two struggle for control. She is wrestled onto the bed, flipped over, and stabbed with the acupuncture needle deep into the neck. She goes silent, her eyes wide open. K is for knives, 5 points. The blade comes out and it pierces Maria's belly. As the killer slices upwards, the film does some quick cuts to the petrified look on Maria's face of frozen terror. Extra points for N is for nudity for a victim being nude during a murder. Another 5 points. We cut immediately to the body being examined at the crime scene. Get a paramedic over here, she's still breathing. Okay, I never understood in specific close-up shots like this that the directors were never like, Barbara, stop breathing for 10 seconds. Just hold your breath. As the crime scene specialists work, Inspector Tellini questions Paolo Zani. Tellini asks if he suspects anybody. Q is for questions, 5 points. We learn that the two were separated for a few months, plus Zani believes the relationship at present was on good terms. I'm gonna say no. L is for lies, 5 points. Exposition dumping, 2 points. The inspector is handed a piece of evidence, the torn photograph from earlier. We can clearly see a naked Maria being caressed by an unknown person. Tellini asks why they separated, if he was jealous, and if he had an insurance claim on his wife. Lastly, he is asked where he was last evening, to which Zani says he was with a friend. The alibi is taken down, and Tellini says it will be checked. A is for alibi, extra points for the alibi getting investigated, 10 points. Tellini lets Zani go and tells him to be available. As he goes, the dog aggressively barks at him and he seems frightened by the dog. In walks this goofy woman. She says it is all her fault, that Maria had called her last night after just having a quarrel with Zani, but she did nothing. Tellini takes note of her boots. The woman feels confident that Maria's husband killed her. This woman, Mirta, reads about the murder in the paper. Tellini comes home to his wife, Anna. She shows him she sold most of their furniture so they could have some money to buy new things. He seems distraught, and Anna believes that he is upset with the amount. Eventually, he tells her about the murder earlier. He admits that he doesn't believe he's cut out for this type of work. The doorbell rings, and a few men show up to collect the furniture. They agree to return the next day, so the two won't be without a bed to sleep on. Anna lets in a cat, not theirs, a drifter, but he's been scratching to come in, and so they sort of adopt him. Cut to the police investigating the different fingerprints found at the scene. Nothing is amiss. Besides Maria and her housekeeper, the final set of prints belong to her husband. They decide to look into whether he did have a policy on her life. They are looking at the half of the photograph closer. They note the male hand is not the husband's, and Tellini points out an artifact in the photo, a blurred object floating behind Maria's head. We then cut to the other half of the photo being given to a private investigator by the husband. He says he will find the man in a number of days, for he is the catapult. He says he doesn't have a phone, but he uses the one at the bar. He gives Zani the number for the bar and says to ask for the catapult and they will know what to do. He sounds like less of a professional PI and more of a professional alcoholic who tells others he's a PI so he can continue to drink at the bar. We cut to the killer once again, gloves on, needle ready, looks like they are going out for another round. We then follow Mirta closing up shop. She is tending to her hair when she hears the door slide downstairs. She goes to investigate and checks the door handle. She checks upstairs among numerous mannequins. Z is for zoom, 5 points. Mirta goes back to her room, fumbles to find something, just as the killer begins slashing their way in. She bolts out of the room. She hides among the mannequins. The killer suddenly attacks. Mirta grabs the knife blade to prevent from being stabbed. Blood drips out from her grasp. Extra points for K is for knives, for the knife being bloodied. Another 5 points. Mirta, likewise, is stabbed in the base of the neck. She collapses. This officer is walking just outside. He lifts the gate. This prompts the killer to finish the job quickly, then flee the scene. U is for undercover for the killer, 5 points. Cut to the crime scene being investigated, and we find out that there was an abundance of drugs discovered by police. The cops take off. Urban locales, 2 points, and I'll add reckless driving for this turn here, 5 points. M is for morgue, 5 points. At least this kind of looks like a morgue. Tallini is looking over all the crime scene reports. He is informed, due to the high quantity of cocaine found, that drug trafficking is suspected. Tallini notices the connection in the two murders through the MO. He orders that the source of the drugs must be found out by wiretapping. He asks about the needle and is shown an identical version. We learn the needle is used in these murder cases to instill paralysis so the victim cannot move while they are being killed. Tallini is outside a secluded house on the beach where an informant tells him this must be where the drugs are traded off and that he's seen Zani going in numerous times. The man says a doctor owns it but is never there, or else the man would have noticed someone going out. The detectives sneak around the house. They search inside and find cigarettes, a layer of dust on everything, alcohol, and the recent newspaper about Zani under suspicion. There are also signs of recent meals and habitation evidenced by the state of the bed. Having not found anybody, they leave. The last thing we see is a painting Tallini flipped over, which is a scene of acupuncture. Cut to Tallini at the doctor receiving acupuncture. Tallini tells the doctor he ought to indict him because Paolo Zani has been hiding out in his beach villa, but the doctor argues that it's mostly abandoned anyway. Tallini argues that the doctor knows Zani and his wife, and that he could have taught Zani to administer such a needle. For what? To kill. Later, as Tallini gets in his car, he is ambushed by Zani at gunpoint. Zani takes his pistol and dismantles it. He is telling Tallini that he is innocent and that he is searching for the killer on his own. He demands to be left alone while he searches. He says that the fact that he is telling Tallini in person versus over the phone is the proof he can offer that he is telling the truth. Zani then leaves and flees into the night, with Tallini giving a brief chase. Foot chase, 5 points. Zani has disappeared into the night. The next scene we watch as a tarantula and a wasp fight to the death. This scientist provides commentary surrounding the rivalry between the two. The wasp always attacks first and always wins. It finishes the battle by stabbing the tarantula in the belly, rendering it unable to move, and then it disembowels it and lays its eggs inside the spider. The tarantula is kept alive to nourish the young of the wasp. Animals killed, 5 points. The scientist is known to be an acquaintance to the woman most recently killed. He wanted the inspector to know about this because of the obvious analogy to the real-world killings. While perusing the container holding the tarantula, Tallini makes a discovery. He notes the container is so flimsy that no customs agent would dare stick their hands inside with a live tarantula, which is perfect because this is not sand at the bottom. He orders the spider to be taken out. Once the tarantula is picked out of the box, Tallini tests the sand. But the scientist tries to attack Tallini using the tarantula. Not a great plan. The spider is dropped as he runs off. Tallini crushes the arachnid and leaves with the box. He then hands it over to an officer outside, saying to give this to narcotics, that the inside of the building is filled with enough cocaine to drug the whole city. The scientist is arrested on drug trafficking. Illicit drug use, drugs present, 3 points. The next morning, Tellini wakes up with the cat. He talks with Anna over the new furniture and then takes the cat outside onto the balcony. He goes back inside and crawls into bed. Anna joins him with coffee. After coffee, he gets frisky and begins putting the moves on Anna. They get under the covers and do the nasty. Aardvarking, 10 points. Necking, 5 points. As they continue, it becomes apparent that they are not only being spied upon, but also being recorded. We watch as more previously unseen photos are being developed of Maria and her lover. Extra points for G is for gloves, for black gloves here. Another 5 points. This woman, the owner of the spa, Laura, makes a call. She calls the photo developer, Mario, and tells him not to mail out the photo just yet. It must wait. He cannot hear her over the sound of an airplane in the background. Airplane, 2 points. The photograph is being closely inspected when it is realized that the unknown artifact is an aircraft. Tellini requests that they narrow down the possibilities of the location of where the photo was taken by calculating the angle of the plane. Meanwhile, Zani is sitting with the catapult outside. Mario writes something on the back of the photos and leaves. They watch as Mario takes off. Zani pays the catapult, then follows him. Mario enters a shop, gets a letter, and addresses it. When he walks back outside, he pauses when he sees Zani, then takes off. Zani is in hot pursuit. They both hop this gate, then run up this spiral staircase. Spiral staircase, extra if used in a chase, 7 points. Tellini arrives on scene and the catapult tells him where the men are. Rooftop scene in progress, extra for there being a chase, 7 points. The officers observe the chase from the ground. They also hop the gate and ascend to the roof. Zani closes the distance. The two men wrestle near a precipice. Prepare yourselves for one of the worst fake bodies in Giallo. Look at it in all of its stupid glory. Max points for a rooftop chase leading to a death. 3 more points to max it out at 10. Someone dies by falling to their death. 15 points. Tellini now chases Mario down the exact route but in reverse. Down the spiral staircase, over the gate, and into the street. A speeding car approaches, forces Tellini out of the way, and kills Mario. Tellini takes the addressed letter. We follow the killer as they park, then run inside the photo lab. They remove all the evidence of the photos being developed, but leave this film cartridge behind. Evidence is seen being destroyed or hidden, 5 points. The inspectors enter into the photo lab and immediately find the film cartridge, and Tellini orders it to be developed at once. Laura parks outside and watches the inspectors. Tellini is informed that the red car in the hit and run was owned by the man killed, Mario. She takes off, as do the officers. The next day, Tellini deposits the addressed blackmail photos in the mailbox to Franca, the woman they were addressed to. Tellini then sits in a bar and waits as he watches a woman, whom he believes to be Franca, walk in. He sits next to her and she passes along a payment to him, a fat envelope stuffed with bills, then leaves. He follows her out, but is held up by the tab. He goes out into the street, but she has gotten away. The woman arrives home, ascends the stairs, and turns back knowing she's being followed. We aren't sure yet if it's Tellini or the killer, though. She fumbles with her keys. She makes it inside and breathes a sigh of relief, but the killer is right outside a door. Which door, though? Suddenly, the buzzer rings. It is Tellini who is right outside the front door. The killer leaves for now. Close up on a door handle, 5 points. She answers the door and speaks with Tellini. Tellini offers her the money, relaying that he knows about the blackmail, and informs her that the blackmailer was recently killed and that she is in danger. He pleads to be let in, and she relents. He confesses to pretending to be the blackmailer so he could learn who she was, then adds that he needs her help for she is the only one who can lead him to the blackmailer. After some prodding, she agrees to help, but requests that it be tomorrow. She rushes Tellini out and shuts the door on him. Finally, alone, the killer returns. Franca is attacked, and the scene cuts away. The detectives are watching the film contents of the cartridge left at the crime scene, and it is the footage from the killer spying on Tellini with his wife. Now, I get that this is humorous to an extent at the expense of their fellow inspector, but none of them seem bothered by the fact that their lead inspector on the case is being compromised by the killer. Seems like a major safety concern. I'll add, someone is taunting the police by phone or by letter, and include this particular instance. 5 points. Tellini goes to see Anna. He tells her that he is handing in his resignation. He finally tells her that his private life has come into the equation, but is vague about how. He has to have told her off screen though, because Anna tells him he can't quit and tells him to forget about the film, that the killer must be afraid to resort to such tactics. Tellini is getting in his car when suddenly the driver of this lorry backs up, driving tens of metal pipes through his windshield like it's the Omen. Tellini goes to confront the driver, but there is no one there. We cut back to the spa from the beginning of the film. These guests are being served by one of my absolute favorite character actors in giallo cinema, Eugene Walter. I'm going out on a limb here and guessing queer characters, a gay man, 5 points. The receptionist from before, Jenny, is quitting, finally fed up with the extortion ring. Laura takes precaution against the blind monsieur, who may be able to listen in on them. Jenny is terrified because the blackmailed women have all been killed, but Laura confronts her as not having a problem before when she was getting paid on the side. Jenny says she is disgusted with herself and Laura, who promptly slaps her once, then twice. Jenny threatens to go to the police at once, and Laura threatens her against doing so. Cut to Jenny making a phone call whilst someone listens to rock behind the screen. The conversation is brief and vague. All we gather is that Jenny will be staying over at a friend's. Jenny walks into the house, which appears to be the same one where our killer resides. The killer spies on Jenny as she gets undressed in the next room. The killer puts their gloves on just as Jenny slips into bed. They enter the room. Jenny asks what they want, but they attack her. After a brief struggle, the needle is stuck into her neck and she goes limp. The killer grabs the knife, raises it above their heads so we can get a great photo op for the poster, then stabs Jenny multiple times before carving her up. The next day, this garbage man is picking up the trash bags when he struggles with one. He opens it up and reveals the murdered body of Jenny inside, which is just wrong. That's compost. I had to throw a dead raccoon in the trash once. It was kind of like this. E is for eyeballs, 5 points. We spend a few moments following Giannetto around, which I am all for. I think in all the ways in which this movie is a clone of Bird of the Crystal Plumage, the quirky gay character trope is nailed in this movie and exceeds the original which inspired it, thanks entirely to Eugene Walter's performance. Laura is informed that the inspector is here to see her. Tellini informs her that he knows of the ring of blackmail going on in her spa and remarks that all the victims of murder were also victims of blackmail. He commands that he will begin interrogating all of her employees now, one at a time. The first person he speaks to is this woman who wears identical gloves to the killer. They discuss how she is leaving this spa for another, one with better hours but worse pay. Outside the office, we see Giannetto stalk about. He comes around and is questioned next. Tellini only really asks him if he is married, to which he says no. Laura then leads in the blind monsieur. Tellini tells him to take off his glasses and he obliges, revealing his eyes. Tellini immediately dismisses the man and offers to lead him out. Laura says she will help Tellini find the killer if he will agree to overlook the wrongdoings perpetrated at the spa. He agrees, and she says she will find out and reveal it to him tomorrow. But in the middle of the night, Tellini receives a call from Laura instructing him to come over to the spa at once so she can tell him what she's found out. The line goes dead and Tellini heads out, leaving Anna to sleep alone. He arrives at the spa and searches, and keeps searching. He searches a bit more and finds a woman lying dead outside the sauna, presumably Laura. Meanwhile, outside Tellini's home, the gloved killer pets the cat outside. Tellini discovers something strange on the floor. He holds it up and it appears to be eye lenses. Odd clue, 5 points. Back outside the home, the cat calls, awakening Anna, who goes to let the cat inside. Tellini goes to the phone and calls home. This causes Anna to walk away from the open doorway. The killer slips inside, but Anna turns, notices them, and screams. They attack her. She faints out of fear. Tellini is now rushing home. The killer is now revealed to be the blind monsieur. He takes off his glasses, revealing normal eyes. Extra points for B is for blind, for the blind person not actually being blind. Another 5 points. Extra points for L is for lies, for the killer lying about an alibi. Another 5 points. And Hidden identity of the killer until the final moments, 5 points. While Anna lays there unconscious from passing out, the killer waits for her to awaken so they might give her the sting. He cuts open her blouse. He taunts her, saying she must be awake or else he will not receive any pleasure. Tallini is heard pulling up and the killer checks the front door. Out of time, he aggressively awakens Anna so he can knock her out with his needle. Tallini breaks in the door, gun drawn. He confronts the killer. The killer surrenders. Tallini checks on Anna and notices she is knocked out. He goes full mental and attacks the killer. Y is for yelling, 5 points. They wrestle, then fight for control of the knife. Pow! Right in the kisser. He's gone slap happy. They fight a little more. Suddenly, Tallini is overcome by flashbacks. 8 in total. And here's 3 more flashbacks. Tallini beats the man's head against the wall as the memories of the victims flash in his mind. The killer is knocked unconscious. Tallini returns to Anna, overcome with tears. In the next scene, Tallini is told that his wife will be fine and that the killer, who was arrested, had killed his wife 5 years ago after she lost interest in him for being impotent. He then pretended to be blind so he could move among women, but he became triggered by the nymphomaniacal nature of Maria, which invigorated him to kill women again so he could feel sexual gratification once more. O is for obsession. Extra points for the killer being obsessed. 10 points. S is for secrets. Extra points for the killer having an impossible to predict motivation. 10 points. Tallini is once again told his wife will be all right, but she must rest up, as should he. Tallini leaves the hospital, where a waiting police cruiser is outside to give him a lift, but he instead goes for a walk to clear his mind. He loses himself in the crowd, and the credits roll. And that's the black belly of the tarantula. This is considered by some to be the greatest giallo ever made. I don't think it is the best, but recognize it as being a must-see for the genre. This probably does have one of the better mysteries and ultimate reveals. The movie is atmospheric and does a few unique takes on the standard tropes, but doesn't overdo the style. I can say that this is probably the greatest, if not one of the greatest giallo films from a director who did not make several more, like Argento, Bava, Fulci, Martino, or Lenzi did. Let's segue to the GialliTally cliches for this movie. Post-giallo viewing cliches. The reason for the killing. Well, blackmail seems to be the culprit at first, but by the end it seems to be mental illness, psychopathy, and obsession, but I will go as far as to say sexual perversion for the most points, 10 points. The reason for the investigation, police investigator, 2 points. Bonus points, the style bonus. The movie is stylish, but not aggressively so. I think most people would agree the style mostly comes out in how the stalk and kill scenes are handled, plus the on-screen usage of S&V, but there are hardly any zooms, just a few focus racks. The colored lighting is in the photo lab scenes, and we have some diegetic sound usage. Also, there's really good editing and stuttering and cutting back and forth. The movie uses its stylistic flair very sparingly and very wisely. Out of a max possible of 25, I will give Black Belly 15 points for its style bonus. Soundtrack. It's Morricone, of course. 15 points. Bad effects? Yes! We have the worst fake body falling and hitting a window. 15 points. Final look? Extra points. The Deadpool, tallying how many kills and deaths are featured in the film. I break it down as thus: 10 points per kill or death scene for the main Deadpool, plus any stylistic kill multipliers, which we didn't add yet, plus the knife kill bonuses. We have Maria Zani, impaled with a knife, 21 points. Mirta Ricci, impaled with a knife, 21 points. Paolo Zani, fell to his death, 10 points. Mario, vehicular, 19 points. Franca Valentina, off-screened, 10 points. Jenny, impaled with a knife, 21 points. And Laura, off-screened, 10 points. Extended Deadpool for those other deaths mentioned but not seen, I'll give 3 points for each. The Monsieur's wife, 3 points. Red herrings for the total number of legitimate suspects in the film. 5 points per legit suspect are awarded. These are my guesses, and honestly, this movie is kind of all over the place. So I have Paolo Zani, the doctor, the scientist, Mario, Laura, Jenny, this unnamed masseuse, and Ginetto, for a total of 40 points for red herrings. I gotta be honest, the movie does a really good job of making you never suspect the blind monsieur. But I will also say, because of this movie, the cliche of the blind person actually not being blind became a thing. Now, every time you see a blind character in a giallo movie, you have to be wondering whether they are faking it. Flashback sequences, 5 points each. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all quickly. And then again, we have 9, 10, 11, and 12, for a total of 60 points for flashbacks. Nudity, I award 5 points for ass, 7 for breasts, and 10 for genitalia. We have ass and breasts, breasts in this photo, ass in this photo, breasts, 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 ass, breasts in this photo, breasts, breasts, and breasts, for a grand total of 106 points for nudity. Ladies and gentlemen, for The Black Belly of the Tarantula, I awarded the film an AZ score of 19 out of 26. With the bonus points for these, we have a modified score total of 145 points. And for the full Gialli Tally score, I award The Black Belly of the Tarantula a Gialli Tally score of 737 points, compared to A Lizard in a Woman's Skin in first with 759 points. The Black Belly of the Tarantula is in second with 737 points, with The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward in third with 728 points. Let's be honest, I am pretty terrible at my predictions, and I wouldn't have thought this movie would have crept into second place, but like I've stated before, these points don't mean a movie is better or is worse. Please like this video, share it with your friends if they are horror fans or cinephiles, subscribe to The King in Giallo if you haven't yet, and if you have any questions, thoughts, curiosities, or concerns, leave those below in the comments section and I will get back to you. Give The King in Giallo a follow on Instagram and a like on Facebook. Subscribe to The King in Giallo Patreon to see early access to my videos, with some videos able to be seen up to 3 weeks or more in advance. Plus, exclusive content found only there, such as the viewings, and very soon there will be podcasts, let's plays for Giallo-inspired games, and book reviews for Giallo-inspired books. Next time on The King in Giallo will be the overview, review, and Gialli Tally for The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, directed by Emilio P. Miraglia. Thank you very much for your continued support. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.